In my first year of college in New York City, I went with a group of friends to see Kate Bornstein, the author, playwright, and gender theorist who wrote the groundbreaking book, Gender Outlaw. I was an excited young feminist, eager to learn from one of the leading scholars on gender theory. The room was packed, and my friends were all eagerly waiting. And to this day, I very clearly remember Bornstein beginning the talk by passing out worksheets from their then most recent book, My Gender Workbook. As the sheets passed down the rows of auditorium chairs, Bornstein read some of the questions on the worksheets off to us. Questions like, which of the following most accurately describes something you assume is true about yourself? A, I'm a real man. B, I'm a real woman. C, I'm not a real man or a real woman, but I'd like to be. D, none of the above. I am something else entirely. Another question. Which of these phrases describes you most accurately when it comes to rules about your personal behavior and identity? A, the rules work for me, and I don't really see that gender rules hurt anybody anyway. B, I think that many social and cultural rules governing individual behavior and identity are unnecessary, and some are just plain dumb. C, I'm trying to figure out which rules to follow and which ones to ignore. D, rules? Honey, the identity police have arrested me so many times, they have a cell block with my name on it. Another question. When was the last time you were aware of something about your gender that was holding you back in the world? A, I never gave it much thought before. B, do you want that in minutes or seconds? C, do you mean the times that I did something about it or the times that it overwhelmed me? D, it was just before the last time I shifted my gender. Friends, this quiz blew my mind. I was so lost, I felt like I was floating in a sea of newness and unknowing. I was 18 years old, I was from Racine, Wisconsin, and I was so firmly embedded in the gender binary that my brain was like a flag flapping in the wind, trying to think of something outside of that binary. It was like I was living in 2 dimensions and someone started telling me that there were actually 3 dimensions. My brain couldn't do it. It was stuttering. It was too many steps away from the gender binary childhood that I had grown up in to where Bornstein was living and telling me about. But seeing the horizon, hearing about that place off in the distance described by Bornstein, it gave me more space to explore. Queer theory emerged in the 1980s and 1990s as a critical lens on society's definitions of gender and sexuality. Queer theory examines how power affects our definitions of gender and sexuality, as well as the rules that govern gender and sexuality. Queer theory upends power dynamics on purpose challenging the rules and undermining categorical definitions of identity. Queer theory grew out of the philosopher Michel Foucault's work, which, among many, many other things, argued that biological sex is not determinative of gender. Rather, gender is a social construct that is both dependent upon one's society as well as one's social location within that society. Gender is one of the rules that helps control and define society. Queerness deliberately loosens that control. It queers the norm on purpose, not only not seeking to be part of the norm, but intentionally upending the norm. Queerness is a critique of abuses of power, and particularly the way gender and sexuality rules control people. It makes connections between gender and sexuality as well as race and economics and ability and nationalism and capitalism and imperialism and militarism. Ask me later about nuclear weapons and gender. I will go on a very long rant. Queerness critiques domination and all of the societal norms and rules of power over, as it particularly critiques social constructs of gender and sexuality. Queer theory helps us understand the ways in which the gender binary constricts and controls everyone. Everyone. It constricts and controls our boys and our men who are taught not to cry, that they are not supposed to feel deeply, they should not connect or emote if they want to be real men. It constricts and controls our girls and our women who are taught they are not strong, that they are dependent, that they should not think or do on their own, and that their only value is in beauty and holding space for others. Gender constructs constrict and control the people for whom the categories boy and girl, real man and real woman do not fit. Those people whose gender does not line up with the social construction of these two polar opposite binaries. And it also constricts and controls the people who were assigned a category at birth that does not fit who they become as a person. All of the anti-trans nonsense right now, and it is nonsense, it's designed to constrict and control us, all of us. This moment, this anti-trans moment, is not just about trans people, although trans people are the most affected and threatened by it, and we have to keep that in mind as we move. But as the Reverend Jim Fody preached from this pulpit 2 years ago, trans people make a convenient internal scapegoat to scare the population into compliance, into being more accepting of increasing fascism and government control over our bodies and our lives. Fascism relies on identifying an internal enemy, and it's helpful when that enemy has a small enough population that most people don't know a member of the community, but a large enough population that it feels scary when the powers that be villainize the population, so that people will more willingly accept increased restrictions of their rights. Reverend Foti noted 2 years ago that trans people in the United States today are the same percentage of the US population as Jewish people were of the pre-war Germany population. I also would like to note that targeting immigrants is a useful tool for building a police state as well. If you claim that deporting immigrants is your goal, then you will need a massive mobilization of the military to deport nearly 4% of the US population. It will require a massive military and police presence and operation in our cities, particularly our large ones, which is exactly what we're seeing right now. It is crucial that we resist attempts to turn our streets into militarized combat zones. We have to resist now. It's when we have the most power. Anti-trans propaganda shores up the patriarchy at a moment when, hey, the patriarchy is losing ground, folks. The good news is that this is all showing up because we're winning. Feminism, the second wave of which flowed through the boomers, found a third wave in Gen X and millennials, and it's now just the expectation of younger generations. Fully 20% of Gen Z identifies as LGBTQIA+. 20%. The clampdown that's happening in this moment on gender expression and trans rights is arriving at, exactly the same time as increased attempts to control reproductive rights. Because these things are tied together. They're about renewed efforts to control reproduction in order to maintain power over labor and wealth at a moment when, hey, that power's slipping away. Good job, everybody. The gender binary functions to control our bodies in order to maintain control over wealth through maintaining control over reproduction. None of it is about bathrooms or women's sports, not even about unborn babies. Those are just sound bites that they think will rile people up and convince us to fight each other and willingly submit to the control of our bodies and our labor and our reproductivity. Thank you. There is so much that is intersectional here. There are so many overlapping pieces of power and control, but I'm just going to give you one story, one example. In March of this year, a woman named Danny Davis was fired from her job at Walmart in Lake City, Florida. Danny had been working at Walmart for 7 years. She had never been in trouble. But a week before she was fired, she went to the bathroom during her shift, as many of us do when we are at work. While she was in the bathroom stall, a man came into the women's bathroom yelling a transphobic slur and threatening to beat her up using another slur for women and genitalia, and said that he was going to beat her up in order to protect his wife. Danny was the only person in the bathroom, so she assumed that this person that came in yelling was talking about her. Now, Danny is tall. She's very tall. She's 6'4", and she has broad shoulders. She's also a cisgendered woman. She was assigned female at birth, and she identifies as a woman. But there she was on that day at work, locked in the women's restroom stall in a very vulnerable state, while a man who was fired up about gender categories yelled threats at her of physical violence that presumably were directed at trans people. Danny just sat there, frozen, frightened, not knowing what to do, hoping that he would leave or that someone else would come in and intervene. Eventually, he did leave. Danny came out of the bathroom stall. She went back to work. She was scared. She was pretty shaken up. Her supervisor noticed, asked why she was upset, and She took a few deep breaths, calmed herself down, explained what happened. Then she finished her shift and she went home. A week later, Walmart fired her. They told her that they fired her because she didn't inform a salaried member of management of the incident, and not doing so posed a security risk. So even though she informed her supervisor, it was not a salaried member of management. But Danny's experience was that Walmart was experiencing her as a security risk. That because she was not visibly gender conforming, customers were having a reaction to her, and it was too much, so they let her go. The entire incident connects the ways that controlling gender is also about controlling labor and controlling people's bodies through strict categorical norms. While Danny's not trans, her gender presentation is outside the norm, and because the gender binary is about controlling all of us through gender norms, that was a problem. The crackdown that we're in on the gender binary means that anyone whose gender doesn't strictly conform to the categories of a real man or a real woman is under threat. I know a lot of gender non-conforming cis women who are just as afraid to use a bathroom in the South as trans women are. The crackdown on the binary wants to shove us all back into these very strict gender categories in order to uphold patriarchal standards of body, beauty, and most importantly, reproductive control. This year's Milwaukee Pride Parade theme is Remember, Resist, Rejoice. If you want to march with us in the parade, please come down. First Church is marching in the parade. Scott, will you wave at everybody? Scott's going to be our anchor, so if you see him, you know that you found the right place. Lineup is between 1 and 2 in the neighborhood. Remember, resist, rejoice. That's what Pride is about. It remembers the past and honors our elders and our ancestors. It resists the current fascist attacks on community. And it rejoices in the beauty, the sparkling glitter, the gritty celebration of LGBTQ people right now. I always want us to remember that the very first Pride celebration was a riot. Pride commemorates the 1969 Stonewall Uprising, when patrons of the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village fought back against the violence of a police raid. In New York City at the time, police would regularly raid the gay bars and beat people up and arrest them. But on June 28th, 1969, the community fought back. That collective uprising, led by LGBTQ women of color, lasted for days. The riot lasted for days, and it was the beginning of the public push for gay rights. The following year, the first Pride marches commemorating those uprisings, they were held on June 28th in New York and LA and Chicago. At this moment in history, it's really important to remember that so many of our rights, from labor rights to reproductive rights to LGBTQ rights, started with someone fighting back. All around the country right now, communities are rising up in resistance, and this is how we fight to maintain and secure our rights. There are regular people on the streets today who are pushing back against armed and hooded ICE agents, helping them resist being detained, helping, not the agents, helping their neighbors resist from being detained. Let us remember and honor the courage of our elders and our ancestors, and let it strengthen our own muscles of courage and resistance and our capacity for risk. Because we need courage right now. But we come from a long line of people who had it. It is in our blood and in our bones. And also, we need to party. We need to party. Yes. So I invite you, First Church, to go out and party today. Put on your sparkliest outfit, smear the glitter across your face and your hands, and be beautiful and loud and sparkly and queer. Glitter, its beauty comes from us reflecting the light, thousands of little broken pieces coming together and dancing and shimmering with joy. The spirit of love and life, they move through you. They move through all of us. They move through queerness and gayness. They move through transness. They move through everybody's magnificent and blessed bodies. And I want you all to remember that every single inch of you is sacred and beautiful. And that in your dancing and your chanting and your marching, you are making more space for more people to get free. Pride is liberation. Pride creates more space and more liberation for more people. So let's celebrate the joy, the pleasure, the dancing, the celebration. That's what we're doing all this for. That's why we fight. So let's have a good time, y'all. This is the fuel. It comes through us. So let's dance and play, be alive, be yourself, be proud, queer up the domination and oppression in the world, flip over some tables, be free, and use your liberation to get some other folks free. May it be so.